And we're off and running on the Krueger Show. Hope everybody's having a great night. John Lund in the house. Welcome to the Krueger Show, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. We're also brought to you by Marin Auto Glass. If you shatter a windshield, marinautoglass.com is for you. And, of course, Underdog Fantasy. Check that link in the description. Use the promo code KRUEG, K-R-U-E-G, and they'll match you up to your first $100. And thanks to Sharp Corners, Sports Cards, and Collectibles in Pacific Grove. My good buddy Anthony Catania is down there. Great collectibles store. If you're into sports collectibles, you're on the peninsula, or you're on the Monterey Peninsula, I should say, check them out in Pacific Grove. And Anthony Catania is at 831-521-5264. The first Friday of every month, they do a little, kind of a street fair type thing. And it's really cool, free food and drink. So check out Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. Johnny Lund, good to see you, bro. How are you, man?
Dude, this is our favorite time of year, man.
Oh, it is.
I mean, it's coming up on Thursday, and I know people think that, we all dork out on this, but nobody does this better than you. And you and I did this for years down at 49ers HQ, man. But I got to tell you, I know there's a lot going on. The Giants we talk about all the time, and obviously the Warriors just ended. But, man, nothing does the NFL like the NFL. And I know you were at the press conference with John Lynch, and we carried it live on KNBR. But, man, it's just it's crazy. It's coming. I mean, we're 48 hours away from this thing, and the 49ers need a big draft, man. John Lynch said it today, but in kind of not so unveiled terms, the finances of this whole thing and how it works. Guys getting old. Trent Williams is 36, and George Kittle's in his 30s and has gotten a lot of mileage on that thing. And, Greg said something really interesting that we should get into today. He said that Greg Papa, the voice of the 49ers, and he said, look, it's not Brandon Aiyuk I'm worried about going anywhere, because I know you and I are going to get into that. It's not – I've never been worried about it. He said, watch Deebo Samuel. How many more years is Deebo going to play? He's hurt a lot too, and he costs a lot of money. My point is that there's a lot of guys who, if you look at this roster, highest paid, Bosa's the highest paid edge guy, and Warner's highly paid at his position, and you got two free agent corners are going to be highly paid. Javarius Ward, you're looking at a 36-year-old left tackle. You're looking at a 30-plus-year-old tight end. There is imbalance on this team, and this is a draft in which you got 10 picks, and you better find some guys, that mid-round magic that the Niners always do. You better find some guys. It's time to find a second tight end that could be a first. It's time to find a replacement for Trent. Maybe he starts on the right side in a couple of years. He moves over. This is a very important draft in terms of trying to balance out the sheet here and start to replace some of these veterans.
Yeah, no, they got to hit. They got to hit in the draft. And I hate to say it because I love John Lynch, but they've got to hit at a higher rate than they've hit thus far under Lynch on day one and day two. They've been saved by what they've been able to do on day three. Early on, they got DJ Jones, and then they got George Kittle, and then of course they got Brock Purdy. I mean, if you take away the day threes and the undrafteds and a couple of the trades for McCaffrey, I mean, they have swung and missed. McGlinchey, Reuben Foster, obviously the trade up for Solly Thomas. They've really Javon Kinlaw.
You just hit it right on the head. I mean, they've done so many good things in the mid and late rounds. The guys that we're talking about getting re-signed. I mean, the Kittles and Warners, and even Debo's a second rounder. But I mean, if you go back even to their first year, and I know people don't want to do this, but it's something that I'm sure they learned from. I mean, Kyle Shanahan was sitting there going, we're getting Kirk Cousins. We don't need to study any of these quarterbacks. Dude, Patrick Mahomes was in that draft, and Deshaun Watson was in that draft, and you decided to trade back one spot and get Solomon Thomas. I mean, it's really a thing when you say, look, you got to study everybody because you never know what the scenarios are going to be. And they got Jimmy and all that kind of stuff. But, I mean, if they take Mahomes, as everybody knows, how many Super Bowls do they have? Well, they don't have a guy denying them Super Bowls, so there's that. I mean, that's the most egregious of them all. And the whole excuse of, well, we didn't study quarterbacks this year or that year because they thought they were eating Cousins. You can't think like that. But they were young in their tenure. But then, Brock saved them. I mean, what would we be talking about with them if Brock didn't come along and save their ass? Because the Trey Lance thing, it's not talked about. But if Purdy doesn't come around, I mean, we're talking about that thing for years, and I don't know where they are at the quarterback position. I guess Kirk Cousins, who went to Atlanta, this finally would have gone to the 49ers or whatever, or maybe even sooner. But I mean, like you said, in the first round, they have. I mean, Bosa's obvious, right? I have to give him credit because they took him, but I mean, pretty obvious.
Yeah.
To Kyler, you were going to take Bosa, but I mean, if they could combine, first round, we were there when they made the trade for Reuben Foster, and we went to camp together, you and I think it was Juszczyk, and Juszczyk ran like an arrow route past Reuben Foster, and you and I looked at each other like, this guy can't cover anybody. And that was before all the off the field stuff, right? So, I mean, their first round.
It's funny. It's so funny you're here because I've told the story probably 100 times about me, you, and Trent Baalke in the locker in the elevator. How you doing, Trent?
Just looking right down at the floor.
Just looking at his shoes. You don't have to answer that.
Honestly,
or what about when I asked him in the interview that we did with him at camp? What do you think about your linebackers? Larry, we really like Gerald Hodges. We think he's got a lot of ability. We like our linebackers. Oh, really?
Yeah.
That was the year that like everybody gashed them for like 7 yards a carry.
When they ran for 100 every single week, they had Aaron Lynch come back that year too. And I remember, you and I looked at Aaron Lynch, and he was coming off
50 pounds overweight. Yeah.
His wife got pregnant, so he gained 50 pounds too. And that was when Baalke, he was talking. I can't do a Baalke like you can. And it was Gerald Hodges and Lynch, and it was like, this team is so bad.
Banged up or diminished Navarro Bowman.
Right.
We like our backers. Everybody gashed him for 100. Jacquizz Rodgers, right. Bilal Powell.
I was just going to say Bilal Powell was the one. The Jets, I remember Rodgers, the Bucks. It was like, he doesn't run for 100 against these guys. That was
the Chip Kelly era. I mean, that's it's funny though. Without Purdy, yeah. I mean, you wonder. I mean, would Lynch and Shanahan be here anymore, or would they have been shown the door? Because it's funny. I was driving down there today, and I'm thinking, what is a question? Because you're always looking for the question that kind of goes viral, or the question that's like really big, or the question that you asked that nobody thought of. And I was thinking, well, I could drop this one on him. John, who exactly was responsible for the Trey Lance trade? I mean, that would have been a monster answer if he had answered it. But I didn't want to be that combative. It's a couple days before the draft, and they've been in the Super Bowl. But Brock Purdy also spoke to us today, and he, it's funny. A lot of people saying, "Hey, Brock Purdy's looking jacked, and he's getting an off season. He's married now." I mean, they really did get that one right, huh? I mean, he just is, I think, going to get better and better and better. I know there's people that are like waiting for the other shoe to fall, but those people are idiots. There is no other shoe to fall. This guy's a solid NFL quarterback. Is he a big arm guy? No, but it's funny because there was that report the other day that, he's got a huge arm, but he just needs to be fired up more. It's like, what? No.
That was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard. Brock Purdy's not fired up enough, really?
He's fired up a ton, and his arm's just okay, but he's a good quarterback. And I think his arm and physical, his physical everything, from his movement ability to his suddenness, his explosiveness, I think it's going to be improved by this offseason working out. That's just my guess, but he's got, I like the way he played. I asked him about the Super Bowl today. I like the way he played in the Super Bowl. I mean, they didn't win, but I like the way he played.
Yeah, look, he's the guy that I have the least worries about. He's not going anywhere but up. He does look a little bit bigger. We'll see when we see him in person. But the thing about him is he stays very even keeled, and he gets on the field, and he's fine. He gets it maybe sometimes a little bit too emotional. He even said he had to calm down in the Super Bowl. Don't most people have to calm down in the Super Bowl? Absolutely. But look, the thing about him that we're going to be watching is the contract, because here's where this draft again becomes so important, because you've got to get some financial stability in some of these places that you're paying too much money, because he's going to get the biggest, think about this, he's going to get the biggest financial increase from year to year in the history of the league. And I'm not talking anything off the field. He's making less than $1 million. Right. He's going to make at least 40. So all of a sudden now, and look,
might be 50.
Yeah, right. Could be 50. I mean, look, this is what the 49ers do. They're great at this, and you can manipulate the money, and you can manipulate the cap. And if you want to fit somebody in, you can. It's fluid. This as well as anybody. But throwing $40 million on there, no matter how they want to manipulate it, it's going to jump. And that's where when you look at the history of that position, when you have like Russell Wilson as a 3rd-round pick for the Seahawks is I think the best recent example. They had the Legion of Boom, and they had all those great defenders, and they were great, and they were a Super Bowl team. Well, the minute that Russell Wilson signed the big contract with Seattle, all of a sudden guys had to go. And they weren't necessarily the stars like Sherman or Cam Chancellor or Earl Thomas, but they were other guys. All of a sudden you're losing a linebacker here and a D lineman there, and Cliff Avrill's gone and Michael Bennett's gone. And all of a sudden they're just not the same team. And that's where I think there's an urgency with the 49ers, because when he gets that $40 or $50 million contract, guess what? All these guys can't be the top of their position and paid. Look, you've heard the same things I've heard. Sometimes they're not as enamored with George Kittle yapping all the time. There's some people in the building, he's not their favorite. And when he has the injuries and the price tag, Greg Papa mentioned Deebo Samuel today. I mean, how long are you going to pay him top dollar if he's banged up? Or in the Super Bowl, where was he in the Super Bowl? He wasn't. Not a lot of people talk about that, but he can't get off the line. And I heard you the other day talking about getting, you need receivers who can get off the line. Deebo's not that kind of guy. So there's going to be some guys in the next couple of years who are going to be casualties just because your quarterback went from $1 million to 40.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, everybody talks about Aiyuk and the fans are like, no, don't get rid of Aiyuk. It's like, guys, you're going to be paying your quarterback 50 times what you paid him this year, not this year, but next year. And there's several somebodies of significance. The guys that you like are going to have to go. So this is not only about, do you like him? Is he good? It's about, do you like him? Is he good? And can you replace him for cheap? Because you got to replace some significant talent going forward. Let's talk a little bit about Aiyuk, because I think the Aiyuk story is really interesting. TJ Hushmanzada was on the radio today, and he's been working out with Aiyuk and knows Aiyuk, and he says that Aiyuk, all things being equal, would rather be a Niner. And I think it's kind of been reported this way a couple times, John, that, Aiyuk wants his contract and he wants to be a Niner. And he doesn't want to go anywhere, but he wants his contract and he wants to be a Niner. But I think he prioritizes it in that order. He wants his contract first and he wants to be a Niner second. And if it really came down to it, he wants that money. And the Niners probably have some budget where they're saying, hey, we want you at 23, 24, we'll go to 25, we'll go to 26. But if he wants to be paid like, maybe Justin Jefferson, or, he wants $100 million guaranteed or 30 plus million AAV, I don't know that they're going to go there. And the reason I bring this up today is that, I've been to these things in the past. And last year when Nick Bosa was in this situation and people inquired, myself, I actually asked the question last year, is there any scenario in which Nick would be traded? Before I could even get the word traded out, John's like, no, absolutely not. He's here. He's absolutely here.
Yeah.
And yet today, he said, we love Aiyuk. We would like Aiyuk to be a Niner, for the rest of his career. But he didn't come out and guarantee. Like, he was asked, is Aiyuk going to be here on Friday? And he's like, I think he basically indicated like, yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking. But a lot of people are wondering if this draft day is going to be kind of a pivot point for the Niners as far as the negotiations. If Lynch loves him so much and he's so integral to what they do and he's so loved, why didn't he just say Brandon Aiyuk, guys, is going to be a Niner? There's no ifs, ands, and buts about that. No ambiguity in this at all. He is going to be a 49er the way he did with Nick Bosa last year. To me, he stopped short of that. So I just feel like he's likely to be a Niner because they've got a high price tag and they haven't had anybody call them yet. But it sounds like they've got a price either that they're looking for in a trade, or maybe there's a price as far as what he's looking for in a contract that, he said all the talks have been good. What's your read on Aiyuk? Because he easily, if he wanted to shut this whole thing down and just say, you know what, Ayuk's a Niner going forward, he could have done it, and he didn't do that today.
Well, first of all, the contract just got signed that is a comp for him, and that's Devontae Smith, 3 and 75 with what like 42 million guaranteed. They're both 25 years old. Aiyuk has one more year in the league than Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith has a little bit better numbers, but they're absolutely comparable. So that's the contract. There's really not a lot of ambiguity about it. If you look at his contract and you look at DK Metcalf's and you look at Debo's, that Terry McLaurin, all those contracts are all within that 3-year, $65 to $75 million range with the guarantees from $40 to $50 million. I mean, that's what he's going to get. So if he thinks that, he's not Justin Jefferson. We all love Brandon Aiyuk. He's great. He's not Justin Jefferson. He's not in the upper echelon. I understand what the Pro Football Focus numbers are, but just for once, watch the damn game. He's really, really good. Having said that, the reason I don't think he's going anywhere is because he's one of Brock's favorites. So Brock is going to be the guy. So who does Brock like? Well, he likes Aiyuk. I wonder if when the shift comes within this offense, because look, Kyle loves this and they got a ton of talent. They got a ton of weapons and all this stuff, but they don't need, honestly, this many. I do think that if somebody's on the block here, it's Kittle and Debo. Now, Kittle does so many things, both catching and blocking. If somehow, this is what would be interesting, and I don't think they'll do this, but this better than I do. They got 10 picks. 10 guys aren't making this team. So let's say a guy kind of like Aiyuk. Remember, they were in the 30s when they got Aiyuk and they went up to 25. What if one of these guys does slip? And I'm with you. I think receiver could be a sneaky position. I think they're going to take who's ever best. And it's a deep draft in terms of tackles after the first few, like that first, 10, 12, Alt's going to get picked, right? Fashano's going to get picked, the kid out of Oregon State. I mean, those guys are the upper echelon tackles. Do you want to take Mims after 8 starts? I mean, that makes me really, really nervous. So if one of these receivers, because it's a deep draft, I could see them coming up and then I could see everyone freaking out, something like that. If Mitchell out of Texas or McConkey out of Georgia or something, it's got to be that tough type of receiver. It's not going to be, we're not going to see that, again, we're talking about mistakes that they made. Oh man, they're not going to take that thin kind of wide receiver like Dante Pettis again, but I could see them doing something like that. But I don't think it's going to be Aiyuk. I don't. I think that there's too much of a Brock to Aiyuk kind of thing. I think that he does want this offense be oriented with pass catchers. I like Debo, and the numbers say that when he's on the field that they win. And he's a multi-dimensional kind of a guy. But I mean, you have Christian McCaffrey. You've got a lot of guys who can do that. I think when they start saving money, I like a tight end, for example, if he's not going to slide, but let's say Brock Bowers, who a lot of people think is going to go at latest to the Colts at 15. What if Bowers starts slipping to 18 or 19 and you're the Niners sitting at 31 going, damn, or, Brock Bowers. I mean, he's always wanted that second tight end, and there are different guys. And again, you're better with the guys than I am, but Sanders out of Texas, the Ben Sinai, the kid out of Kansas State. I mean, there's a number of different guys. But I mean, Bowers is head and shoulders. I mean, what if Bowers slips to around 20? Do the Niners all of a sudden say, hey, you know what? He can catch, he can block, he can do a lot of the things that Kittle does. And I'm not saying they're going to do it this year, but that certainly opens up things for the next year. I'm just saying, I think that you asked about Aiyuk, but I think they're going to look all over this draft to try to replace pricey guys. John Lynch said it to you guys today. I mean, he basically said the term of, it may not be for this year. It may be for next year. Well, what he's talking about is Trent Williams. He's talking about Kittle. He's talking about Debo. He's talking about look, Dre Greenlaw is coming off an Achilles and they're paying him $9 million. That's not going to work. He's talking about the corners. They're not going to be able to sign both, Ward and Demo Lenore. Both those guys aren't coming back after next year. Those guys are going to be too priced out, especially Ward. So, there's some good corners. Again, there's 2 that are really, really good in Mitchell and Arnold. But after those guys, there's a bit of a drop off. What if Arnold starts sliding? A Nick Saban, Alabama, tough kind of a corner. What if Terrion Arnold starts to slide and he's around 20? Do the Niners come up and get him? Because they're not going to
kid.
Great. I mean, they're not going to sign 2 corners this offseason because Brock's number that's where Brock's number, again, to go back to that, you're not going to sign Brock and 2 corners. Guys are going to continue to take pay cuts. Kyle Juszczyk said he would. Eric Armstead said he wouldn't. Believe me, over the next few years, that's going to become the norm for this team. They're going to have to get salaries under control.
Yeah, no question. And you're right. Lynch did say, hey, we may be drafting for future years with this draft. More than anything, the Niners need to get great players, whether they get offensive players, defensive players, corners, O-linemen, D-linemen, wide receiver. They just need greatness. They need a great player. They need foundation piece players. They can't just draft guys that wind up being, he's all right. He's one of the guys, but he's not. They need some great players. The one thing, though, I'll say is go back and listen to the question today in the Purdy presser when he was asked about Aiyuk. He goes off and he starts talking, and then he says, I've got confidence in John and Kyle that they can find the right pieces to put in this offense. And he was asked about Aiyuk. Like, it was like, not only did he not stand up and say, hey, man, that's my number one guy. I need that guy. This is my guy and I got to have him. It was like, it's almost as if he's saying, I trust in these guys. If they move off of them, then I'm confident that they can replace him. I mean, it was very interesting because he was asked about Aiyuk, and then he ends his answer by saying, I believe in John and Kyle and their ability to find players that fit our system.
Well, see,
that was very revealing, but we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm reading the tea leaves on this one wrong. I've been wrong before. Giants fans who keep throwing my Jung-Hoo Lee tweet at me from earlier this year know that I've been wrong before.
First of all, you and I talk for hours every day. I got news for people. If we recorded everybody and what they said, they'd be wrong a lot. We are, but we throw opinions out there. I mean, if somebody want to walk down the middle of the fence and get splinters up their ass, then yeah, you're not going to say anything and nobody's going to care what you said. I mean, who knew? I mean, the most you and I, not to go on a Giants tangent, but the most you and I knew about the KBO was in 2019 during the pandemic, when that was all there was to watch.
We wagered on it.
Yeah, we wagered on it at KBR. I mean, it's, look, I think they're going to keep Aiyuk. I mean, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Believe me, I said all sorts of stuff. I mean, when Jordan Hicks came over, I'm like, are you kidding me? Now through 3 or 4 starts, what do you have? A 157 ERA. I get knocked about that all the time. And I just go back to him and say, we're 4 starts in. I mean, I'm not wishing bad for the guy, but we're 4 starts in, and he went 5 innings yesterday. And
right. Anyway, I mean, you got to pump the brakes.
Right. But back to Aiyuk for a second. I mean, the whole thing is that I think that Purdy needs him. I think that's the big thing is, look, McCaffrey's great and Kittle's great, but he can disappear. Debo disappeared in the Super Bowl. Flat out, could not get open, disappeared.
I think he was pretty banged up, to be honest.
He was, but still, that's not his thing. His thing is he does multiple things. You get him the ball in space. He's going to run hard. He's going to, there's different. He's not a great, well-refined, and never will be route runner. That's just not what he does. He's great after the catch. I'm not knocking the guy. I'm just saying that Debo does certain things, and I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if, keeping Aiyuk or not, they went out and got another receiver who was a little bit more conducive to what Brock is, which is he's a pocket passer. Guys got to get off the line and guys get open. And I could see, and Jennings has a great role too, but here's what they're missing. And again, here's another miss. Danny Gray was a 3rd rounder at SMU. Yeah. He's done nothing. He's going to do
glass.
Nothing.
He's hurt all the time.
Right. So, there's a couple of guys, and I don't think Worthy's the guy. I mean, he run a 4.21 at the 40, the kid out of Texas. But he's 165. I mean, it's just, I don't see him as a Niner rugged. They need speed. I mean, they are desperately, they need to stretch a defense. And Aiyuk is okay at that. He made the great catch against Detroit down the field. He can make those kind of plays, but I'm talking take the top off kind of a guy. And there are guys in this draft like this. One guy that Papa mentioned, and the reason I bring this up is because he's pretty dialed in, is Brian Thomas out of LSU, 6'4", 210. You know him, runs into 4.3s. He can't catch normal passes, but if you put it down the field over the shoulder for him, talking about, stretching a defense, he can do that. He's great at high pointing the ball. That's one guy I would keep my eye on. But
he's a star. Yeah, he might be better than Aiyuk. The kid had 17 touchdowns this year, and he played opposite Malik Neighbors.
Man,
so he's talented. Yeah, I mean,
it's interesting. My point is they need something, and even if Aiyuk stays, like, I could see people freaking out because you're sitting at 31, and if they don't move up, which they might do. They could move back, but they have 10 spaces. So I think they might move up in the 1st round like they did to get Aiyuk originally. And if it's a receiver, it doesn't mean that they don't like Aiyuk. It's just that they have a board. And when you're sitting at 31, tackle's a need. Corner's certainly a need. Guard's certainly a need. I mean, for a team as good as this team is, they definitely have needs. Tackle, John was asked the question directly and wouldn't answer it. But look, they need an answer for Trent Williams. Right guard, Burford lost the Super Bowl amongst every other thing, but if they pick up Chris Jones, Brandon Aiyuk is wide open in the end zone. So, right. I mean, there's a number, they could always use an edge guy. They could They could always use a lot of those interior defensive linemen are all under 1-year deals. They could use interior linemen. Is Greenlaw going to come back the same? I know they have some young guys that they like and Graham and Winters, but they need linebacker depth. So, I mean, they could go in a number of different directions, but it wouldn't shock me entirely that keeping Brandon Aiyuk or not, that they would address that position, because it's even after the first 3, then it becomes beauties in the eye of the beholder, right? I'll defer to you for sure. But with McConkey and all the different types of receivers, we just talked about Worthy and Mitchell. And I mean, it's kind of a beauty in the eye of the beholder. Do you want a fast guy? Do you want a slot guy? Do you want a tough guy? Do you want, size? There's a lot of different types of receivers. And even though Debo is a really good receiver, and I'm not saying he's not, but the conducive strengths of Brock Purdy is get rid of the ball. Guys got to get open, and he's getting rid of the football. If you're getting tangled up and you can't get off the line, that's a problem for Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I would want as many weapons that can succeed in the middle of the field with Brock Purdy, because he's so deadly in the middle of the field. Maybe a Malachi Corley if they're thinking down the road on Debo, because maybe you draft a guy like Corley this year and get rid of Debo next year.
People keep saying he's got kind of the Debo type, right? Not a great route runner, but
poor man's Debo. Yeah. He's not as dynamic as Debo, but he's not as big as Debo. But I like him. I definitely like him. I even like the quarterback there, like Austin Reed or whatever. I kind of like him in the late rounds. The thing about Aiyuk is that I think the Niners would move him if they got the right price. But, the question is, what's the right price? Now, there's a report today the Colts may offer 15 for him. That's pretty high. Obviously, Jacksonville, Trent Baalke fired all of his defensive coaches at the end of the year. He knows he's gone next if they don't go to the playoffs. They got Trevor Lawrence. They only have Evan Ingram. They don't have tons of receivers. He can't pick a receiver. He picked A.J. Jenkins. Trent's a survivor, Johnny. And the one thing about, he's the kind of guy that would, do the right thing for himself over the right thing for his football team. And I could see him maybe trading 17 for Aiyuk to try to save his bacon. I could see the Steelers, who haven't won a playoff game in 5 years, trading for Aiyuk. And the other one that I think is kind of interesting, and I don't know if this is going to happen because, it would probably have to be 2 2s and a player or 2 2s and a pick. But I was told that Bob Myers went to Washington to try to win as fast as they possibly could, and that they're going to take Jaden Daniels at 2, and that they may offer their 2 2s and something else for Aiyuk, and try to pair up Jaden Daniels and Aiyuk. The only reason it makes sense to me is because the Commanders, Myers is there to rejuvenate that dormant brand that was just totally pissed on by Dan Schneider, get them to win a few games, get some butts in the seats, and get some momentum to a new stadium so they can kind of revive that whole iconic franchise. So I don't think, even though it's year one, I don't think they're going to be in a typical year one conservative mode. I think they're going to be in a year one aggressive mode, and Aiyuk could be a big part of that. They signed 15 free agents, so I think they could come hard at the Niners. I think Harbaugh desperately needs a receiver. The Chargers could come hard at the Niners. They've created a bunch of cap room. So it's, I think Lynch is right to not guarantee that Aiyuk's going to be here, because I think there are some desperate teams that could make a bad deal. And I think if there's a team out there to make a bad deal, the Niners, I think, would take that and get down the road. But I think all things being equal, I think Aiyuk would rather be a Niner, and I think all things being equal, the Niners would rather have Aiyuk, and they're not giving him away. That all being said, there's a couple other things I want to get into here. One of them is, what do you view as the number one need right now? Is McKivitz, struggles in the Super Bowl? Does that make you think it's offensive tackle and Trent's age? Is it defensive tackle? I mean, this team always talks about their D-line. Is Malik Collins and Jordan Elliott going to be enough to take over for Armstead, or will they? Because they could be looking at Johnny Newton, at Michael Hall, at Rook whatever.
Yeah,
they could be looking at some really. I want to see Rook Aroro just so Greg has to say it every day.
Charles Davis was on with us today, and he couldn't even say the name, but he said that he was looking at another D lineman for Clemson, and he kept looking at 33, and that's who that was. And he's like, I like this guy, and he's young. He didn't Didn't start
He
playing
looked great at the combine.
Yeah, he's a nice player. That's what we were talking about for a team that is so accomplished as they are. They have a lot of needs. And now, here's the thing, and you know this as well as I do because you're down there all the time. They are. I think the term urgent is maybe not even strong enough. Desperate may be too strong, but they want to win a Super Bowl really bad, and they know that with Brandon with Purdy's contract getting as big as it's going to be, they just don't have a lot of time, and guys are getting older. Trent's 36, man. I mean, and when guys fall off the table, they fall off the table. Trent's great, but he's probably only got a couple of more years. So it depends.
It's go time. It's go time.
Yeah. So I really do think they're going to move up in 31, and I think they're going to address a specific position, but it's going to depend on who's there. Again, the two corners, that's for the future, but they need a nickel guy, and they could move Debo inside the nickel, and then whoever they draft play on the outside. They desperately need a corner. I mean, they were getting picked on throughout the year. They Ambry Thomas, whomever they want to throw out there, it's not going to work. And I know that they picked up Yadam from the Saints, and they tried to address the position. He's a special teams guy. I had 1 year with him. I don't know how you feel about him. He's okay. But
he'll be interesting to watch in July.
But if somebody slips, I could see them going up and getting a corner, and that guy could, because you got two free agents, your top two guys in Demo and Ward. Those guys are both free agents. You're not signing them both, and you don't want to start a rookie out there. So, ease this guy in. By the end of the year, maybe he's really solid. This. They've been getting killed at the corner position, whomever the third corner is, for a number of years. It's prevented them, I think, from winning a championship. Or if one of those tackles, Mims has got 8 starts. Tyler Guyton is a guy who played tight end. And again, I'm preaching the choir here because you know all this stuff. But
from what I've heard, from what I've seen of Tyler Guyton, I think he looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane. I think he's
15 starts as well. So
he's not the answer.
I don't see a guy that's, the kid out of BYU. I just don't see a guy that even in a couple of years is going to plug there. They're not going to get lucky and go from Joe Staley to Trent Williams, but they got to figure something out there. But you're right. If you're a team that here's the thing that's always been funny about the 49ers, at least under John and Kyle. If you're a team that wants to slam the ball at the opponent, for all the bells and whistles that they have offensively, really what they'd like to do is slam Christian McCaffrey at the defense 25 times a game. But you're going to do that with a journeyman center and Aaron Banks at left guard and one really good offensive lineman. And then the right side is a mess. And I like Feliciano, and he'll probably start, but he's better served probably playing a reserve role and everywhere. But Colton McKivitz isn't good enough at right tackle. I mean, they need to address the offensive line as a whole, and that's with Trent Williams. But I don't know, look, if they could get up there, because there's a lot of guys, Graham Barton, a kid out of Duke, and John said this today when asked about the offensive line, you were there, which is he saw a lot of guys with versatility, which NFL teams love, right? You play tackle, you can play guard, you can play center, they can move them all around. I wouldn't be surprised if they went in that direction, because then you have some versatility up front. But for everything that we're talking about, and you're right, they need defensive tackle help. Long term, they need some edge help. They probably want to address it early. They need depth at linebacker, et cetera. They need depth at safety after what's going on. But I really think that they've got to address the offensive line in some way, shape, or form, because you can't tell me that Burford, who missed that big block in the Super Bowl that allowed Chris Jones to screw up what would have been a touchdown. McKivitz was one of the worst rated offensive tackles in the league on your right side. Brendel's just okay at center, and Banks is just okay at left guard. And you want to protect Brock Purdy, and you want to pound the ball at the opponent. That's the problem. You have all sorts of bells and whistles and fun stuff to play with offensively, but the offensive line isn't up to the par of a 49ers team. I mean, defensively, I think the line will be okay with that Armstead. I think they did a really nice job in recovering from him. But the offensive line, 4 of the 5 offensive linemen are below average, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. No, I mean, I had Baldy on a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about offensive line. And he said, this is a former offensive lineman. He's like, I don't think you have a great offensive line if you don't have a great center. And the guy that I love in this draft at 31, if they stay there, is Zack Frazier from West Virginia. He's a wrestler. He was a championship wrestler. He was the captain. He's got a 4.0 GPA. He's a little short-armed, but he's just tough as hell. I mean, you better start matching up with the Lions.
Right.
The Lions have Aiden Hutchinson going against McKivitz, and they just signed DJ Reader, the guy who made Jake Brendel look like a high school kid in that Bengals game last year. And the Niners, if they're going to get serious about going to the Super Bowl, you better match up with Detroit and Green Bay. So the Green Bay means you better have a corner because they got all kinds of receivers and a young quarterback. And for Detroit, I think that means you better get real on the offensive line because they're going to build up their D line. And, you're going to have to compete. They have DJ. They're going to go after probably another D lineman. They've got Hutchinson. They just signed Reeder. They're bolstering that D line. So I don't know. John Lynch kind of said when today, I thought he kind of gave one thing away. He's like, when he was asked about this year and how this year is defined as far as the class of 2024. And he's like, it's really good on the line of scrimmage. And he didn't say O-line. He's like on the line of scrimmage. So I think there's a bunch of good O-linemen. There's a bunch of good D linemen. They brought in Michael Hall from Ohio State. And I know Michael Hall, John, is projected to go, mid to late second round. But Michael Hall is 20 years old, ran 4.76 at 300 pounds, led the nation this year in pass rush win rate among all defensive tackles. He's the fastest defensive tackle in the draft. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Bryant Young, and he's only 20. He's not going to be 21 until like August. I could see them trading back from 31 and taking Michael Hall. Or Johnny Newton. Johnny Newton's similar in a lot of ways. I could see them going D tackle early and maybe going offensive tackle, in one of their next maybe day 2 picks. But we'll see. They always, seem like they go defensive tackle. You mentioned safety. There was a rumor about 3 weeks ago that the Niners were one of 3 teams that might be interested in a draft day deal for Budda Baker. In a lot of ways, if you think about, man, they got to win now. They need a dynamic player in their secondary, like Snead, like that slot corner that was so good against Debo.
Yeah.
What's his name? McDuffie. Snead and McDuffie, I thought, won it for Spagnuolo. And the Niners could really use. I kind of feel like both Jair and Hufanga are both box strong safeties. I don't know if they have a big time field safety. It's probably going to be Jair, but I think he's a productive interceptor, but I think his coverage is just okay. What do you think about the idea of trying to fold Budda Baker in some way? I've heard that the Cardinals may move him on day 3 for like a 5th or a 6th. He's a great player.
It would depend on his contract again and how long it was. I'd have to check. I can jump and check it right now. But just in terms of the fit on this team, at every level, but that they do need a guy at safety as kind of a veteran back there. That's what was really nice the last couple of years. They had that back there. And again, it's nothing against Hufanga, but Hufanga tends to, just is kind of a magnet to the ball. Jair Brown had a nice interception in the Super Bowl, but he's going to make mistakes back there. Budda Baker would be amazing. He'd be absolutely amazing on that level because, again, at the safety position, as you well know, that's kind of a sheriff back there. Somebody who's getting everybody straight and getting everybody in order. And the way that the game is played right now with the quick stuff through the middle, one of the biggest plays that doesn't get talked about in the Super Bowl, and ironically enough, for Shee Rice on that short, just a slant, about an 8-yarder, and went sideline to sideline. That kind of a stuff where there was a couple of mistakes in the Super Bowl, and those are the kind of things, communication kind of things, lack of veteran kind of things, where that's what you need. If you could get that kind of guy, and they did hunt in the offseason for one of those guys. Blackman went back to the Colts. They talked to a number. Rayshon Jenkins went to Seattle. There was a number of different guys, which shows that they, not necessarily rookie, although there's some, it's not top heavy, the safety class, but there's a lot of good safeties. Again, beauty in the eye of the beholder. There's run guys, there's pass guys, there's a number of different types of safeties, and there's some good ones in this draft, but I don't think that's what they're looking for. They have that. I think exactly like you said, after the draft, is somebody get released? Is Arizona, just based on the numbers, and let me look up his contract real quick, but based on the numbers, if you could fit a Budda Baker in, you do that in a second, because not only is he productive as a player, he's a leader. And you've got leadership, obviously, on the defensive line. You got leadership with Fred and Dre and those guys with the linebackers. Ward, that's not kind of his thing. That's not what he does. Demo is great on the field, and he's got a great personality off the field. But you like to have that guy back there that's kind of a veteran, can calm everybody down. Plus, he's still productive. It's not like Budda Baker's old. He's a really good player.
It might be the kind of deal you could make if you could get Aiyuk signed this weekend, because it would create some cap room
I
and
think
you
people
could
have to
maybe
understand that what you just said about he's going to drop his number. That's the big thing. That's another reason why you want a guy
right
term. He's going to drop his number so that maybe you
by
can go out.
$10 million.
Right. Yeah. So that'd be huge.
In year one, of course. But then, of course, there's the down the road cap to consider. But as we said, the Niners are in their Super Bowl window, and there might be some extra urgency to saying, hey, you know what? You got one more year before Brock makes $25 million a year, or 50, or who knows, somewhere between 25 and 50 he's going to make. You would think, probably 40. I mean, somewhere in there. So you got one more year this year to like make it happen and kick the can down the road if you want. Will they do that, or will they move off of some key guys in this draft? I think that's going to be, one of the interesting subplots to watch this weekend. All right.
David Baker, $12.5 million, 1 year left on his deal. So, I mean, that sounds like a lot of money, but again, it's before Brock. It's before Brock gets paid. It's like Christ, before Brock. So it really, you could fit that in there. You could find a way, and then he's a free agent at the end of the year. And
or maybe you extend him. Maybe you extend him a little bit, and you spread that money out a little bit.
Clearly, that was a need because they talked to a number of veteran safeties and feel like they need a guy back there to kind of head that up and be a leader in that secondary. Because again, I'm preaching the choir, and this, and everybody listening knows this. You screw up as a safety, that's a big play. And do you trust Hufanga, who likes to freelance a little bit, and Jair Brown, who look, I think Jair Brown's going to be a nice player, but he's essentially played a little bit, played in the Super Bowl, but he's essentially kind of a second-year rookie at the same time next year, and he's going to be your deep safety next year. You want to have a veteran, and I know that.
Look what's behind him. They don't have any. I mean, George Odom's a special teamer. Everybody else is kind of just a guy. I was kind of told from one of my Niner moles that while they love Hufanga, they feel that reality is that he was hurt tons at SC, and that he's been hurt with the Niners, and that they probably can't really rely on Hufanga. So that's interesting. That means they're exceptionally thin at safety, and I think safety could be a major, major priority. My good friend Kyle Posey on Niners Nation came up with 12 guys that the Niners could take at 31. I love 6 of them, and I'm not too cool on 6 of them. So I'll give you the names and tell me what you think. I was listening to you today as I was driving down there. You and Greg were doing a segment on the Niners, and Greg seemed very, very energized when he brought up the name Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU, the wide receiver. I don't know that he's going to be there. I can't imagine he is. How could he fall to 31 when Buffalo's at 28?
Right.
But and Buffalo's desperate for a receiver. But if Brian Thomas fell to 25 and they could get up, man, Brian Thomas is big and fast and productive with ball skills. He's dynamic. He might be the best talent the Niners have had at wide receiver since T.O. What do you think of Brian Thomas?
I love him. I mean, like you said, Buffalo's taking a receiver. It's just a matter of who slips. Is it going to be, Adonai Mitchell out of Texas? Is it going to be McConkey? I don't think that he's type of their guy. Brian Thomas screams Buffalo to me. He can get down the field. What good is Josh Allen's rocket arm if you don't have a guy to throw it down the field to? Mitchell's fast. I don't think they'll go Worthy. Worthy's kind of a guy. If you've got a bunch, Xavier Worthy out of Texas, if you have a bunch of guys already on your team, and then he's your third or fourth wide receiver, and he can just run, you're going to get jets to him and smokes, but then he's just going to go right down the field. He's 165 pounds. He's not a Niner, but I don't think he's a Bill either. I think it's going to come down for them is going to be Mitchell out of Texas or Thomas, one of those two guys. And then, do the Niners like Mitchell? I don't know if he's their kind of guy, but I think Thomas is.
Yeah, A.D. Mitchell's interesting. He started at Georgia, transferred to Texas. He had a little girl. He wanted to be close to her. But he won 2 national championships at Georgia, and he's very springy and tall. And, people say, well, man, Worthy's fast. Well, this guy's fast too. This guy ran in the 4.3s. Worthy ran 4.21. Worthy. So Mitchell's on this list as well. Worthy's on this list. I saw an interesting rumor tonight that the Dolphins want to try to pair Worthy with Tyreek and Jalen Waddle and just put together a freaking track team. Wouldn't that be something if the Dolphins, who have unbelievable vertical speed, added a vertical receiver like Worthy? I don't think he's a Niner fit because, as I said, you got to have guys who can operate in the middle of the field. This guy's almost strictly a sideline go pattern guy.
Yeah, I don't see a guy that's going to be that's 165 pounds in the 49ers. You have to do so many other things. Kyle, being a former wide receiver himself, holds him to a really high standard. You know that. You're down there all the time. And you got to do everything. You got to block. You got to do all these different things. And I just don't see a 165-pound guy doing that. Again, special teams are going to become more important because of the new rules. I think we're going to get more kickoff returns, and they're trying to put some of that into the game. But I think that, again, there's guys down later in the draft that you can get that if you're looking for that kind of a player to replace Ray, which I know they got Trent Taylor. I'm not overly excited about that. I think he's just a camp body. I can't believe that Trent Taylor would make this team.
Well, I think that's Kyle having nightmares about the Super Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, we lost the Super Bowl. How do we lose it? We lost it on a, special teams play. Let's get the most conservative, we'll get a guy who can't run at all, but he can catch, he'll catch the punt. That's what he's thinking.
Yeah.
Darius Robinson, defensive lineman from Missouri. He's like 290. You watch him, you look at him, you go, man, that's a little Aldon Smith-like. I mean, he's interesting. I saw Dave Lombardi. I was sitting next to him down there today, and him and Barrows put together like dueling mocks, and one of them had Darius Robinson coming to the Niners at 31. What do you think of that one? He was the practice player of the week in Mobile. He's a defensive end. He could give them kind of that Arden Key NASCAR package guy. I think Darius Robinson, if he gets at the right weight in this Chris Kacerek wide 9, he could be a dynamic player opposite Bosa, but they also brought in Leonard Floyd. So what do you think of Robinson?
Well, he's a bigger guy for people who don't know who he is. He picked up football late, and he just had one really good season at Missouri. He's actually a Detroit guy, and he's going to be one of the few guys at the draft. And he's excited that it's in Detroit. That makes one of us. But it's why there's 15 kids showing up in Detroit. But anyway, I digress. He's as you well know, he's like 285, 290, can play inside, can play outside, was a team captain on Missouri. I mean, he's a good player. I just get nervous about guys like that because where are you going to play him? I mean, he hasn't shown that he can master inside. He could, like you said, he could go NASCAR package, which means you're moving your ends to tackles on pass rush downs. But he's not twitchy. He's not off the edge twitchy. So you're going to get a guy who can set the edge. And it's not that I don't like him. It's just I don't know where to put him. And I'd rather have a twitchy. What I want opposite of Bosa is what D Ford was supposed to be. I want a twitchy, fast guy. And that's not even Floyd. But I mean, I'm talking about, Floyd only signed a 2-year deal. I mean, I'd like to get a twitchy guy. Like there's a lot of, I don't know if Chop Robinson's on that list or somebody, but are you going to take a chance on a twitchy edge guy, or are you going to go Robinson who can play inside and outside?
Yeah, and Chop Robinson is on the list. My only concern with Chop Robinson is that I watched a lot of Penn State, and I felt like Adisa Isaac was better.
I agree with you.
And Chop Robinson is a great workout guy, but it's like I like guys who are stars in season and not stars out of season. He might be a little bit of a workout wonder. That would be my concern with him. Johnny Newton's on that list from Illinois. He's had some injuries, but I asked Baldy, I said, give me your favorite interior defensive lineman in this draft. And I couldn't even get the question out. He's like, Johnny Newton, Illinois. So he's studied him pretty good.
He's good. By the way, the term that gets used with him, and you always love this with a defensive lineman, is like wrecking ball, or like a ball of knives, or like that's what people
rolling
call
ball of butcher knives.
And so, like you said, it's like he's an undersized guy. At what, 285, maybe 6'1", 6'2". But, again, that's not the worst thing. And people will look at it and say, well, we don't need defensive linemen. Well, if you look at it really, I mean, you signed a couple of guys who are going to be 1-year guys. And then even Hargrave, if people look at his contract, they can get out from under this thing after a year or after next year. And I know that he had injuries and all these kind of things, but can we agree? He wasn't what he was in Philadelphia the prior
Nothing
year.
close.
Absolutely awesome and crushed the 49ers. I mean, he was great that year. He was getting sacks and kicking his leg up in the air. He had injuries at the end of the year, so I'll give him that. But he did not play well in the playoffs. He played better in the Super Bowl, but for what they're paying him, and they had to go to Jet and beg for him, because they're in this window like they are. Hargrave has got to be a lot better. So you got Hargrave, who now with Armstead being gone has to give you that pressure in the middle. And then the other guys are you turned me on. I texted you right when they made these moves for the interior defensive lineman, Collins from the Texans. And I said, what do you think of these guys? And they're nice rotational defensive tackles, but neither of them are Eric Armstead.
Right.
So he's
And
gonna
they're
have
not
to play a
stars.
lot.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
they're
don't know
not. They'll stop
Collins.
the run, right? They'll
Yeah,
be
but they're
solid, but
not commanding double teams though.
right. So that's where Hargrave get over the injuries, whatever the case was, adapting to the team, whatever the deal was last year. You got to bring it like you brought it in Philadelphia because Bosa's bringing it, but too many times it was still that we can still double Bosa. We can still try to take Bosa out of the game because there was nobody else they respected. Well, now Armstead's gone. And when Armstead was healthy last year, hell, he played good in the Super Bowl. Now all of a sudden, Hargrave's going to be facing some of that stuff. Floyd is going to be a guy that it's not that I don't expect double-digit sacks out of him. I do. But there's going to be times where Floyd's just not going to be on the field. He's an older guy. He's thinner. He's not going to be playing, 80% of the snaps. And so all of a sudden it's down to Hargrave and Bosa to create that. So those other guys have got to step up their game on the defensive line. My point in being so long-winded is a Johnny Newton wouldn't be a bad idea, even though you look at it and you say, geez, they've got a lot of defensive linemen. As well as I do, they love drafting defensive linemen. And so if there's one they like there, they might go in that direction.
Yeah. I mean, if you have one, look at the Super Bowl. Bosa was rolling and they only got 3 sacks all night on Mahomes and they couldn't rush him enough when they needed to. I think if Michael Hall or Johnny Newton or Aurora or one of those guys they really like, interior rushers is there. Now, they're not going to take a one technique. They're not going to take Tavondre Sweat in the first round or anything. They're not going to take McKinley Jackson or any of these guys that are true nose guards. But if you got a pass rushing dynamic interior player, I could see them going in that direction because they didn't get enough pass rush. All right, here's another name. What about Cooper DeJean? Baldy loves Cooper DeJean and was saying, he can play corner, he can play safety, he's dynamic. He had an injury at the end of last year, but he had his pro day and he showed that he was plenty over that injury. Guy's a playmaker deluxe. He might be just an impact guy in the slot. You're talking about a third corner.
Punching kicks.
Yeah, Cooper DeJean, some people think is going to be a dynamic NFL player. What do you?
I'm a big fan. Again, that's somebody they'd probably have to trade up for. He's not going to make it to 31, but again, you get the versatility there. He's big. What is he, about 6'2", and he's over 200 pounds. He can tackle. He can support. He was part of that really good Iowa defense. They're really good and great fundamentals. My only question would be, because we were talking to Charles Davis about him today. Charles Davis really likes him from NFL Network, but he said, where do you put him? He's not sure. Is he a corner? Not necessarily. Plays a lot. It can play a lot of bail technique, but he said also, is he a safety? Can he play the slot? Some teams love that because now you have that wild card that you can kind of play all over your secondary. But he said that, he's kind of the master of none, great at many, master of none kind of a situation. So, yeah, he's a tremendous athlete. He can play corner. He's got great size. But is he a corner or a safety? He said he wasn't sure.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of the question. Okay, here's another name. What do you think of Ladd McConkey, Johnny? He ran in the 4.3s, but he only had 2 touchdowns this year. I'm kind of questioning the durability. The reason he only had 2 touchdowns this year is he was hurt. But he definitely is an excellent route runner. I'd almost like McConkey as a finishing piece if they were keeping Aiyuk and keeping Debo and just trying to, but it seems like they need more than just a slot receiver, especially on this offense. How many balls is Ladd McConkey going to catch? You're going to take him 31 overall, but he is talented. He is a great route runner. He does run in the 4.3s. What's you and Greg been talking about with McConkey? I heard you guys mention him today.
Yeah, he's really good. But and if you want to go back to his tape, as you well have, like his junior year when they won the national championship, he was basically unstoppable. But like you said, I don't know at 31 if that number one is the best fit, because we just talked about the other bigger receivers that I think they kind of need. And then the position he plays, well, he is definitely different than Juwan Jennings. Jennings is kind of your slot guy, your third down guy, and that's what McConkey would be. So I almost think you're being a little bit redundant in that situation. I would much rather do Thomas, because what they are lacking is a downfield threat. And Thomas is big and can go get the ball. Mitchell is big and can go down and get the ball. I think that's the kind of receiver that they're lacking. If you look at the wide receiver core and say, okay, let's look at our team. What are we lacking? I'd rather go either the big over the top guy or the smaller quick guy. What, Malik Washington out of Virginia or something?
Yes.
Like 5'8", 185.
He's great.
They're missing that kind of quick speed, And again, he's a punt and kick return kind of a guy. He's better than Ray. Like I'm going to say to replace Ray, but I'm saying he's better, and he's probably a fourth rounder, that guy, or third, fourth rounder, something like that.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't like McConkey. I do. I think he's going to get drafted by a team like stinking Kansas City or something, and he's going to be a perfect fit on that kind of a team. You're kind of a better version of like an Edelman type, and I'm not trying to set the stereotype of Wilker and Edelman. I'm not trying to do that, because this guy's actually bigger and can play on the outside as well. I just think for what the 49ers are looking for and for the needs that we've talked about, I don't think McConkey's a fit for the 49ers.
Yeah. Okay. John made another point today that I thought was really interesting. He said, I really like, good genes. And he was asked about, there's a bunch of guys that are tied to the Niners. You got Brendan Rice from SC, who's a good receiver. I mean, then there's Christian's brother, Luke McCaffrey. Yeah. And, there's a lot of people down there today who are like, I'm very convinced they're going to go after Luke McCaffrey. I know it means a ton to Christian. I know he said to Lynch, hey, I want my brother. His brother was a quarterback. He played receiver this year. He was all conference. He ran a good 40 time. He had some great workout numbers. I don't know if he shows separation on film, but and then there's Tariq Owens, which is Terrell Owens' brother or son. He's not going to get drafted. But I could see him as an undrafted guy. And then there's Frank Gore's kid. Frank Gore's in their personnel department. And I could see that being a very popular 49er draft pick late on day 3. And Frank Gore Jr. looks a lot like Frank Gore Sr. I mean, I'd take a flyer on him. I absolutely would, especially when you look at how long the durability and the longevity of Frank Gore. What do you think? Are any of the guys with the blood ties to the Niners interesting to you?
Well, I'll take in the reverse order that you said. I mean, the 49ers always take a running back. All right. So hopefully not in the third round, because the third round running back over the last couple of years has not really been kind to what the 49ers have done. Trey Sermon, and I can go down the line, but I can see Gore being a late round or free agent type. He's smaller. I mean, Frank Gore was only 5'9", his son is too, but his son's only listed like 195. I mean, Frank the Tank really was an apt nickname for him. So he's not as big, but he does run hard, and you like that. McCaffrey would be a really good fit. Like you said, he beat Kirsten by 0.1. Wasn't it 4.46 to 4.47 when they came out? So, and he's long, and he's just learning to play the position. So I could definitely see him being a guy that the 49ers be interested in. And again, he's maybe a faster version of what Juwan Jennings is. He'll go up, he'll get the ball. He's smart. I could see Kyle really loving him, because it's another quarterback thought process on the field. He's going to be in the right place. He's going to do the right thing. He's going to know the entire offense. He's going to block. He's going to have fundamentals. He's a McCaffrey. He's going to work his ass off. They have that connection. So I could absolutely see that. And then as far as Brendan Rice is concerned, he's really interesting. Started at Colorado, went to USC. I think he's a bigger version of Juwan Jennings, and a faster version, I should say, of Juwan Jennings. He's about 6'3", 215. He's not going to be a burner, which is, I'd love to see a burner on this team. That's where we're talking about Thomas, who's big and fast. He runs in the 4.5s, but I think his best football is ahead of him. I think that he showed at USC last year. What do you have, 12 touchdowns? He showed at USC last year that he's getting better and better. And I almost think, though, that if I'm the 49ers, I almost take him off my board. Because Jerry Rice's kid playing for the 49ers, can you imagine the amount of pressure that's on that kid? He would never say this publicly, but I would think he wouldn't want to be drafted here. Would you?
I think he's actually made some comments to that point that, Jerry made his name here and that he may want to make his name in a different spot. But I do like him. I mean, the one thing is, it's like wide receiver is the one position on the team where the guys have to complement one another. Right. And the Niners already have, Brendan Rice. His name's Juwan Jennings.
Right.
If they didn't have Jennings, then Rice makes sense. But if you have Jennings and you only have 5 receiver spots on a roster, how are you going to get Brendan Rice on the field?
And he's not a return guy. He's not he's not a kick punt return guy. Yeah. So he's not that kind of a guy. I mean, for whoever comes in to play receiver has got to fill a bit of a Ray role, which is, especially again now, kick returns are going to become more important. And so that's why I was saying Malik Washington or somebody along that ilk, where you're going to play special teams. And I think the receiver, as you hit it right on the head. Debo is different. Aiyuk is different than Jennings. Gray was a guy that they wanted to take the top off of a defense. He hasn't worked out. I don't know how many more chances he's going to get. They want different kind of a guys, but the one trait they want is toughness, blocking, buy into the scheme, being at the right place at the right time, being smart, those kind of things. And so Greg was saying this today on the show, Papa, he was so obsessed the year Aiyuk came out with Jerry Jeudy, but he didn't realize because it was so early in the tenure of John and Kyle that, they have a type of receiver they take and they have a type of receiver they don't. And Jeudy was kind of a head case, thin, I just want to catch ball. Like, they're not going to take that kind of receiver. So whomever they take, I think that you hit it right in the head. It's got to be somebody who fits a role they don't currently have and yet will play within the system. And you mentioned McCaffrey's name. I mean, he's going to do he's a McCaffrey. I mean, he's going to know the game. He's going to be smart. He's fast enough. I thought he was going to run in I had heard he was going to run in the mid to high 4.5s. So for him to run in the mid 4.5, the 4.4s, high 4.4s, whatever it was, I think, he makes a ton of sense. But again, it's all about where you're drafted. I mean, I don't think they would take him in the second or third round, but if McCaffrey's sitting there in the fourth round and they've already hit maybe a tackle and a corner, and here's McCaffrey sitting there, because they're going to take a receiver. And I know that's going to lead people to have their speculation about Aiyuk, but that's a sneaky need for them. They know it. They need a return guy. They need some other receivers. Like I said, I mentioned Debo's name before. They need a guy who can get off the line of scrimmage, and they need a receiver with some speed.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a guy in Malik Washington that might be the guy. I mean, talk about a plug-and-play guy who's ready to contribute. I mean, the guy played, 12 games last year, and I think he had 10 of them with over 100 yards. I mean, if anybody played fantasy college football, everybody would know that kid's name. He was dynamic as hell. He started at Northwestern. He transferred, and he was really, really good in both spots. I mean, he was good at Virginia. He was good at Northwestern. Okay, two last ones before we let you go.
Sure.
What is the scenario that is going to make you go, fuck? Because for me,
they took me last year. I wanted to stab myself in the eye.
I don't want the seventh best offensive lineman. I did a deep dive with a buddy of mine who actually scouts in the league, and I said, the Niners are so big on these offensive linemen. I need you to go through the board with me and walk me through your exact reports on these guys. And we got to a number of them. It was like way different than like what the public thinks. Like, a lot of people are like, Tyler Guyton. He's like, Tyler Guyton looks like Tarzan and plays like Jane. He pops up out of his stance. He never finishes blocks. He says he's played right tackle, but he has no potential to play left tackle. He's a huge guy that looks the part, and you want him coming off the bus, but he's going to disappoint you, and he doesn't play to the whistle, and he's just not what you're looking for. So that's one. Then I said, well, what about Kingsley Sumatea or whatever? Yeah, and the BYU kid. He's like, he doesn't run block at all. He's like, he's good as a pass protector, but his run blocking is garbage. I said, what about Jordan Morgan from Arizona? He's like, oh my God, steer way clear of him. He goes, he's got short arms. He's a guard, and he got bull rushed in the Pac-12 by defensive ends. He projects inside to guard, and he's going to get bull rushed like a monster inside. So he doesn't like Jordan Morgan's long-term future. I said, what about Roger Rosengarten? He's like, you know what? He's not very strong. He got absolutely dominated by the Wolverines in the national championship game. The second half, he said it was just an absolute bloodbath. He just couldn't block anybody, couldn't stand in front of anybody. So he doesn't like a lot of these guys. I said, he went down the list. He gave me a bunch of them. Now, the offensive lineman that this guy liked, okay, and he likes J.C. Latham. He thinks that, you can't bull rush J.C. Latham. If he starts to fall, he could be your right tackle for the next 15 years. He likes Fashanu, but only as a pass protector, not really as a run blocker. He really likes Amarius Mims. He said 36-inch arms, 11-inch hands, but you got to wonder how much he only allowed one pressure in all of 2023. But he said, I don't know how much he loves to play the game, and I worry about guys who have only made 8 starts. Do they, some guys find their way on the field, some guys find their way off the field. I like Troy Fatanu. I said, what do you think of Fatanu? And he's like, you know what? I think he's a guard. And I don't think he's got a mean streak, but I don't think he's a great run blocker. He's underpowered in the run game. He can't really push anybody. He likes Fuaga as a run blocker. Graham Barton, he's like, no. Graham Barton's a center or a guard only. He said power just destroys him. It's a major issue for him. He doesn't think he's a tackle at all. He likes Jackson Powers Johnson. He likes Zack Frazier at center. Powers Johnson's a huge center.
Yeah,
he said he just
dude.
dominates he said he looked awesome in the Senior Bowl. He didn't lose one-on-one. He said Guyton couldn't play dead. He likes Christian Haynes from Connecticut. Didn't like Jordan Morgan. Didn't like Rosengarten. Said the Yale kid is like 2 years away from being 2 years away. So that doesn't fit. Who else did he like? He liked Cooper Beatty from K-State. He said he's a brawler. He kind of like Patrick Paul, but he said he's got really long legs and sometimes he loses balance, but he's got crazy measurables.
I can see them liking him. He's a tackle out of Houston. He's athletic and long. He's like 6'7".
He only allowed 9 pressures this year, and that's pretty damn good. He liked Mason McCormick. He liked the Notre Dame kid, Blake Fisher. He said he's a dominant run blocker. He liked Christian Mahogany from Boston College. He said he's a violent run blocker. He liked Christian Jones from Texas as a little late-round guy.
I see them taking him later.
Super experienced. He says he really finishes people in the run game. He loved the Georgia center, Cedric Van Pran. He says every single game that Van Pran plays, he'll pancake 3 or 4 guys.
That's an underrated need. I mean, I think that, and this is you mentioned 3 centers there now. Oregon kid, West Virginia kid, and Van Pran, the kid out of Georgia. They need one of those guys. Now, Van Pran's going to be a little bit later, but they have a very average center, and that's what starts up front. You know,
he said Bordellini got destroyed in the Senior Bowl. He lost every single one-on-one. The Penn State center, Norzad, he said he's a wall. He's strong as hell, but he said any movement at all, and he's just totally baffled by it, and he's just totally, pretty much rendered useless if you have any kind of movement inside. So it's like, it's interesting. The one guy he kind of liked and said he thought the Niners would take was Walter Rouse, who, started at Stanford, transferred to Oklahoma. He allowed the lowest pressure rate, 1.32% of every FBS offensive tackle in 2023. And he's a really good run blocker. And he went to Stanford. So I could see him being a day 3, Niner guy. He liked Zach Zinter. He liked Javon Foster. He liked Bo Limmer. So, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, this is a guy who gets paid for this. And like several of the guys like Morgan and Guyton, who are heavily, mocked to the Niners, he's like, oh my God, sprint away from those guys. So
I don't see those guys being Niners anyway, because we just talked about the physicality of the receivers. There's a certain kind of lineman that they like. I mean, look, Trent Williams aside, just kind of look at it. Banks is a mauler type, right? I mean, McKivitz is what he's not. He's a mauler type. I mean, they want physical offensive linemen. So the finesse guys, we're just talking about Jordan Morgan and guys, Guyton, those are more finesse guys. And so I just don't see that. The guy, and he's not going to slip, so it's not going to matter. Of all those names, Talise Fuaga, the guy out of Oregon State, he's the nastiest.
Yeah.
He's 6'6",
he's nasty.
30. They could put him at right tackle. Hell, they could put him at right guard if they wanted to. He absolutely mashes people. You want to go watch some fun tape. He mashes people. Now, could he go over to the left side? I think eventually in a couple of years he could. But again, he's going to go because the way this draft is going to go at the top, and I don't know about you. I think the first 4 are going to be quarterbacks. I think somebody's going to trade for Arizona's pick. I think they're going to go 4. And knowing Harbaugh the way that we do, and I think everybody's, it's not that Marvin Harrison isn't great. It's just, and those receivers aren't great, and obviously need receivers after what they did in the offseason. But he likes starting with beef, and I think that he'll take the kid out of Notre Dame at 5. I think that at 6, maybe the Giants are going to move 6 to 4, but if it's the Giants, then they'll go wide receiver. 7, Tennessee is going to go probably one of these offensive linemen like Fuaga. 8, Atlanta could either trade out or they're going to go defense finally. 9, the Bears, who knows, they could go wide receiver. They could go offensive line. They'll probably go like a Dunze or who's ever left. And then 10, the Jets could be a wild card. They signed a bunch of veteran offensive linemen, or they could go Bowers because Aaron Rodgers probably wants to have a top tight end. They signed a bunch of receivers. So I could see that. But if for some reason a guy like Fuaga slipped to like 15, the Oregon State kid, I could see the Niners going up and getting that because he is nasty. He is a Niner. You know what I mean? He is he's a baller. And of all the tackles, to me, he's the most impressive, and he's the most plug and play. in terms of like you could put him at right tackle next year in place of McKivitz. And a lot of people, and you've heard this too, a lot of people think McKivitz is better at guard. And so you could put McKivitz in at guard and he could be a nasty mauling type of a guard. And then you've got, Fuaga on the outside playing right tackle, and hopefully in 2 years he can be your left tackle. That's to me, he's the best guy. I just think that potentially he could be gone with the Bears at 9 or early. I don't think he could go to the Raiders at 13. I mean, they still need offensive linemen. So I don't think he's going to slide. But if he is one of the guys that slides, and let's say he's, in the early to mid teens, if I'm the Niners, I go get that guy.
Yeah. My biggest fear is like a trade up for Jordan Morgan, that they trade up like 2 or 3 spots and take a super, low end, guy who may not even be a tackle. That would be my nightmare, is that, a trade up for Jordan Morgan or Tyler Guyton, trying to get the 7th best offensive tackle. I'd much rather go D tackle.
The reason why I'm with you on Guyton, I'm not sure he's very good, but the thing, and he has a limited, not like limited like Mims. Mims has everything if he played 25 games. It's just that
if you knew Mims was fired up and that he didn't play for legitimate reasons, and obviously
seriously, if he had that,
Mims is a blue chipper. Mims could be awesome.
Yeah, if he played 25 games. The guy is 6'7", 340, is like a ballerina in movement. He's massive. Like you said, what is his arms? 36 inch. It's ridiculous. All the measurables and everything he has.
11-inch hands. He's just, but you got to wonder at that size, is he James Wiseman? Was he born into a body that led him down a road, but he really has no interest in playing the position?
When you've played 8 games, when you've started 8 games and then you've had the injuries he's had, I'd get too nervous on that. But I know somebody's just going to be too tantalized by him. If he's sitting there at 31, I think he sounds like a Raven to me at 30. But if he's sitting there at 31, you roll the dice on a guy like that, because he is truly, of all the offensive linemen, like the biggest boom or bust guy. Look, he could take over at left tackle in 2 years and hold it down for 10 years. He could be out of the league in 2 years. That's the guy.
No doubt. No doubt. And you wonder, as I said, so everybody's looking at their watch these days. You're either looking at your watch saying, man, I got to get home. I'm at the facility and I want to leave. Or you're, looking at your watch at home going, man, I want to get into the facility and start working out. And you just got to figure out, which guy you got. You got to have as many guys who want to be there. If you got a room full of guys that are dying to get home, that's not good. And you wonder sometimes if a guy made 8 starts, could he have played in, could he, how many times are you going to be 100% in an 18-game schedule? You're not. So it's like, playing hurt is like kind of a prerequisite in the NFL. And, if the guy can't play hurt, then that's a problem. That could be a real problem.
Let me ask you this, because you have such a great handle on all this stuff. Is there a guy, whether you move up, something realistic, like obviously they're not getting, Caleb Williams. They're not getting, Marvin Harrison Jr. They don't have that kind of ammunition. Is there a guy that you have your eye on? I know you're the master of 7th round free agents, guys we haven't heard of, but you know it all from first to last. So they're sitting at 31, right? And somebody starts slipping. Is there a guy that you'd get after if it was start slipping? And if they had to stay at 31 among the names that have been around there, what's your favorite in that position?
Well, it's definitely the guys that would slip that would make me go, I got to get in there, is Fuaga and Bowers and Thomas. If Bowers, Thomas, or Fuaga falls to the mid-20s, I got to get up. But I also really believe in depth, and I think, I think day 3 picks are valuable. This organization should know better than anybody how valuable day 3 picks can be.
But they're not going to pick 10 guys. That's
no, but here's the bottom line. Even if you did pick 12 guys, even if you wind up cutting a couple guys, what if you found a Brock Purdy in there? What if you found a great player in there? And I think, so that at least the way they've drafted, at least I think they ought to consider, the fact that, 12 bites of the apple and you're trying to find greatness.
What about if they stay where they are? Like,
if they stay where they're at, I think they're absolutely perfectly primed to do the trade back from, and now this is not going to be the exciting thing for your broadcast Thursday night, and it's not going to be the exciting thing for the draft party, but I think the smart move is to hang out at, obviously if you don't make any moves to move up, you're hanging out at 31. If somebody really big time falls to you, you pull the trigger. Otherwise, I got to think that if Penix or
Yes.
Nix are still on the board, that there's going to be teams that want that 5th-year option on the quarterback. And if I were them, I think they're perfectly positioned to move back like 3 to 5 spots from round 1 into the very top of round 2. Let that team get the 5th-year option on the 6th quarterback of round 1, and then choose an offensive or defensive lineman. I like Zack Frazier as a center. I think he's an absolute star. And I like Michael Hall from Ohio State. I saw Michael Hall just dominate Michigan in the Ohio State Michigan game, and the speed, the power. I see a lot of Bryant Young and Michael Hall. So I love Frazier. I think he's a Pro Bowler. I love Michael Hall. I also love Luke Aroro, and I love Johnny Newton and some of those other defensive tackles right in there as well. But I think I'd go offensive tackle or defensive tackle at 31. Frazier to me would be an awesome way to start. I mean, you have Brock Purdy. Build your fortress around Brock Purdy, and Frazier could be great. You got to block Chris Jones. If you're going to win the Super Bowl, you got to block Chris Jones. That means you got to have some interior guys that are really tough, and Frazier's big time.
The story about Frazier, for those who don't know, dude broke his leg in a game in November at West Virginia, and he crawled off the field. Like, he was like, no stretcher, no medical staff. No, I mean, he crawled on all fours with his leg up in the air, and he's crawling off the field. I mean, that's the kind of guy you're talking about. And then by the time the draft process started, he was ready to work out. So if there's
the guy's crazy. I interviewed his teammate, Lee Koba.
Ridiculous.
Lee Koba said he's one of the toughest guys I've ever seen. He had a 4.0 GPA. He buries people in the run game. He's super, super violent, a little bit short arms, but so does Tyler Linderbaum, and he's had a nice career with Baltimore. The thing though, what I love about Frazier, he's a championship wrestler. And, from scouting, it's like when you have a wrestling background, this guy was 48-0 as a wrestler. And you understand leverage. And so to me, the wrestling background, he's an academic All-American. He hardly ever missed a start. He was their 3-year team captain. He's just, to me, he's a plug and play guy that would take, Jake Brendel and just say, you know what, Jake, your services are no longer needed here. And I like Jake Brendel, but he got worked bad by DJ Reader, and now Reader's in Detroit. I mean, come on. I mean, and you got Chris Jones sitting there. You need to be dynamic at center. I would try to build a wall around Brock Purdy, and I would start with Frazier. But if you told me you wanted Michael Hall and you're going to go, you could trade back 5-10 spots and easily get Michael Hall. I think that might be the route I'd go.
I think the other thing too is, and again, I keep harping on the corners, and I don't think Quinyon Mitchell or Terry
awesome.
are going to drop. Those guys are just too good. But again, if one of those two guys,
he would be another guy. If he fell, I'd be all over that too.
Yeah, because they the last couple of years. I mean, how many times have we sat there and here comes Ambry Thomas on the damn field or somebody like that? And look, I like Demo and I like Ward, but they're short one. I mean, look at this division, right? I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba in Seattle is just going to get better. Cooper Kupp is going to be healthy with the Rams. The Cardinals stink, but they got some guys who can play in the slot. I mean, you're going up against 3 wide receivers more and more in this league, and you got to. I mean, they have missed having a good corner. That was a major problem, thinking that Oliver could be the slot last year. You need it in run support.
Oh.
They love running blitzes out of that slot. Even if they have to move Demo and one of the guys plays on the outside, but they have got to find an answer to having 3 competent corners. They have 2, but they need another one.
Yeah, TJ Tampa from Iowa State, maybe is a good name there. All right, last one. I think the most interesting part about the whole draft is that going into the draft, every quarterback's going to be a Hall of Famer. But literally within 2 years, even like 2 weeks, once we get to like week 3, once we get our first look at these guys, we're like, oh, that guy can't do it. This guy can't do it. Like on draft day, every quarterback's a stud. Lance was going to be great. Fields was going
How
to be
about
great.
2020?
Wilson was going to be
4 of
great.
those 5 guys have already been traded.
I know. I saw Zach Wilson went to Denver today. Mac Jones had a good rookie year, and and then I don't know if you saw Belichick the other day on with McAfee, and he's like, you know what, a quarterback or a wide receiver in the first round is a 50-50 proposition. So I mean, I totally agree with that. And it's funny yet, like people will ask, hey, who's the quarterback that you like? And I really like Michael Penix, and I think Penix is really special. But it's funny if you say to people right now, yeah, I think Michael Penix is the best quarterback in the draft. It's like, what? He's better than Caleb? He's not better than Caleb. Like Caleb is just like Johnny Unitas and freaking Joe Montana all rolled into one.
There's no Andrew. I mean, I like Caleb Williams, I really do, but there is a little bit of a risk there. And I think your point is that there's no Andrew Luck's coming into the draft. These guys aren't guaranteed. And the bottom line to this whole thing is and we're just talking about the top 4 here with Caleb Williams and Drake May and Jaden Daniels and JJ McCarthy, is that, like you said, 2 are going to bust. In 2021, we didn't think that's all we were talking about, right? Well, Trevor Lawrence hasn't even lived up to expectations, and he had 48 starts at Clemson.
He was supposed to be Andrew Luck part 2.
I mean, look, Zach Wilson had a good pro day, and everybody freaked out. He had a terrible schedule. It was during the pandemic. He only had 1 good year. And he just played backyard football at BYU. Trey Lance didn't have near enough starts, as we found out. Justin Fields never learned how to sling it. He can run all over the place. And Mac Jones, like you said, just got beat down in New England. So 4 of those 5 guys in 2021, the first 15 picks and the first 3 overall, 4 of those 5 guys have bombed, and Lawrence hasn't lived up to anything. We never would have thought that in 2021. And now we're looking at these 4 guys thinking all of them are going to be successful. I mean, bottom line is, at best, it's 2-2. And look, I don't know. I think Caleb Williams has a great chance to be very good. He's not Mahomes, but I think he has a very good chance to be good. Drake May, I think, could be, but again, I think it's going to take him a minute. But if he goes to New England, think about the situation he puts himself in.
No weapons.
They don't have any weapons. They have nothing. They have an below average offensive line. They don't really have a running game. So, I mean, how successful can the kid be? And there's no way that he's not going to start, right? I mean, he's going to start. And then JJ McCarthy, I like him, but you know what's funny is I was thinking the same comp, and then I saw Daniel Jeremiah in his latest mock draft. You probably saw it.
Alex Smith.
And I thought, that's who he is. He's Alex Smith. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. It's just everybody's going crazy for the guy. And we know how Harbaugh plays football. And I know he wants to run and play defense. But he also knows well enough that if he does have a gunslinger who can chuck it, he'll let the guy chuck it. And it's not like Justin Herbert's going to hand the football off under Harbaugh. He's smart. He'll play with the pieces that he has. My nervousness comes from the fact that, look, I think J.J. McCarthy's a really nice athlete. He's a nice player and everything like that. You're going to take him 4th? So there's a team like Minnesota is going to say, we're going to give you 11, 23, and our 1 next year for J.J. McCarthy? Now this can come back and bite me, but I just don't see it. I'm
not seeing this whole quarterback class. I mean, Caleb does some incredible things, but there's something wrong there. I mean, he to me, I thought the ball that he threw at his pro day, his ball wobbled. I mean, SC was not good, and they have tons of talent. I think Caleb might be a little bit overrated. Drake May, to me, his accuracy is just okay. I mean, he comes from an athletic family, granted, but I don't see that. I don't see awesomeness there. If there's anybody that I see special with, it's probably Daniels, because I love the way he's kind of I mean, ASU Daniels was stunk, but the guy who I've watched at LSU the last couple of years has been amazing. And I think that he's had real growth, and I love the way he throws, but he's so thin. You wonder about durability there. JJ McCarthy has been on some incredible high school and college teams. So everybody's like, he's a winner, but I don't know. I do kind of see Alex Smith, and Alex Smith eventually got it going. I think Penix, people are like, you like Penix more than Caleb? They played in the same conference, and Penix played better. I mean, they went to the same combine, and Penix lit it up. I mean, Penix lit it up at the combine.
Does the championship game give any pause? The one thing is, he was so good against Texas.
He was bad that day. Yeah, he was bad.
But again, to me,
He needs to be protected like all
it.
quarterbacks, but he's got a laser.
He
I mean, the
does. He's got
guy's
a great
got
arm.
incredible arm.
And I think they can fix a little bit of because he carries the ball so low when he throws. I think that they're going to have to fix that a little bit. But
Yeah.
again, that's what coaching is for. I mean, the fact is, like you said,
What he has, though, they can't teach.
well, did you see too that it was in the what was it, the Players Tribune or whatever that is, and people were questioning his injuries, and he said to that, he said, I'd question a guy who never got hurt because he goes, I've come back from all these injuries, I've persevered, but teams are going to look at that, and again, you know this because you know how football operations work. You're either going to give him a clean bill of health and say, okay, he's had the shoulder, he's had the knee, he's had these issues, but we give him a clean bill of health. There's probably going to be teams that just don't want to mess with the injuries itself. But like you said, in terms of a guy who had a season last year, who has a rocket arm, now if he's got to get protected. He's a little bit different, although at his pro day he runs a 4.5, so he is a hell of an athlete, had a good vertical. So he is a good athlete. You don't always see it on the field, but you can't teach what he has, man. He can just rocket it, which is
dude,
why I even think the Raiders might even move up. I mean, Mark Davis, even though it's not Al, he still has the whole, and I know he's not in charge, but he's going to be in that room, and they still have a philosophy of height, weight, speed. I mean, they do. No matter who's running that operations, they still have that height, weight, speed thing going. And I could see, Al Davis would love Michael Penix.
Well, Al Davis will have a rare human being, so there's a chance they may take one of those gigantic offensive tackles and try to build around the deal. But where does Seattle pick? I don't think how does Seattle pass on Penix? They don't have a quarterback. They pick in the teens.
Right. I've got friends there. We talk all the time because I always like to know, you and I are both this way.
They say an O-line
in Seattle. Well, it's hard to know with McDonald, even though Schneider's in charge, they want a certain kind of a player that's going to be happy for him. So while his honeymoon's going on, for some reason, they'd like Sam Howell. And one of the things, and you know this, Sam Howell played a hell of a game in Seattle last year. I think it's probably the whole reason that they went and got him. And it's not that I don't like Sam Howell.
He's fast. He's got a great arm.
Some things going on. But if I'm Seattle and I have an opportunity, because again, you know this, I'm just reminding it for people. Ryan Grubb's their offensive coordinator. He was the offensive coordinator of Washington, so he knows him. But Seattle has a lot of needs, man. Defensively, I think McDonald needs certain kind of players in there. Offensively, especially the interior, they've got those bookend tackles, but the interior of their offensive line is atrocious. And that's where, some of these offensive linemen might go off the board in that kind of a range. But I've said the same thing to my buddies, and you have friends up there in Seattle too. Would they take Penix? And they don't think so. But again, one of the guys that I respect the most, and I know you've had him on and you've talked to him a lot, Brock Heward. Brock Heward's the former Seahawks quarterback, University of Washington quarterback. He's a huge Michael Penix guy. And he knows people within the organization, and he thinks they might pull the trigger on him.
Wow. I mean, that to me is kind of one of my fears, is that Seattle drafts Michael Penix and Michael Penix becomes what I think he could become. And that's one of my fears in this draft. All right. On the way out the door, favorite player, regardless of position, just a player that you just love in the draft. And it doesn't have to be for the Niners. It doesn't have to make sense. It's just a player that you're just like, man, I'm just so convinced this guy's awesome.
Well, there's two guys, and the Niners aren't getting them, but I think Malik Neighbors is the best wide receiver in the draft. I think he's better than Harrison. I think I like Marvin Harrison.
I do too.
But it's not that having Larry Fitzgerald as a comp is a bad thing. It's not. It's just that the dynamic, the speed, the run after the catch, all that kind of stuff. I think Malik Neighbors of all and think about it. I mean, Justin Jefferson's come out of there. I mean, it's wide receiver man. Chase has come out of there. I mean,
Neighbors is so special. You saw the Barnwell trade for the top five. Guy. Now that's not happening, but man, I was looking at that trade going, I would probably do that because I think Neighbors is going to be a star.
I love him. I think that he's a guy that if the Niners could get their hands on, oh my God. But I think he's going to be better than Marvin Harrison. I love Brock Bowers. I think he's going to come into the league. I think he's more Kelsey than Kittle. People have been giving it a Kittle comp. I don't know that he blocks like Kittle. I think he's more Kelsey than Kittle, but I still think that whoever gets him, like if the Jets get him at 10 and they keep Aaron Rodgers healthy, I think that could make a massive difference for them. And then one guy, and it comes down, I'll give you a defensive guy. There's a couple of defensive guys I like, but I like the kid out of UCLA, Latu.
Yeah.
If he was healthy, I mean, people don't realize he was medically retired from football at Washington 2 years ago. You know this. And he had a hell of a year at UCLA. And I think that if he stays healthy, I know people talk about Dallas Turner and some of these other guys that are good edge rushers. He just has the it. I mean, if they could have him across from Bosa, because he's 265. I mean, he could set the edge. He can get after the passer. He's got all the technique. He's mature. He's smart. I think he's going to be a great player. And I think that he's not going to be the first edge off the board. I think that's going to be Dallas Turner, maybe the Falcons at 8. But I think he's going to be really, really good. And I like Byron Murphy the second. He's not going to be Aaron Donald, but man, he's just a whirlwind defensive tackle. And you mentioned this a little bit earlier. Everybody talked about Devondre Sweat, to 360-pound tackle. It was Murphy that was just absolutely taking teams apart. And again, undersized, about 6'1", about 300, not even 300 pounds. But man, he can play inside. And again, I don't think the Niners would have a chance to get him. And I don't even know if he'd be a scheme fit for the 49ers. But my fear is at the Rams to try to replace Aaron Donald, get Murphy, and I think he could be really good in the middle of their defense.
Yeah, I love Max Melton, the corner from Rutgers.
Ooh,
he's nice. Runs in the 4.3s, hits like a truck. Family, bloodlines are awesome. His brother plays obviously with Green Bay, star with Seattle. I love Max Melton. I think he's a very safe corner, and a great player.
He could be maybe a second rounder for the Niners. Could you get last?
Yeah, I love him. To me, I see, setting the edge. We talk about, they set the edge with your D linemen, but you a lot of times set the edge with your outside corners. Manuel Mosley was a huge loss for this team. This guy would give you that edge defender that's just really nasty. I love Cedric Gray, the linebacker from North Carolina. Nice. I mean, I watched this guy 15 times in the last couple of years, and he just kept making tackle after tackle. I tuned into the Senior Bowl in like the fourth quarter. Everybody's like shaking hands and, patting people on the butt. This guy's still running around, making tackles. Cedric Gray, to me, is one of the safest players in the draft. And I know the Niners aren't going this route, but to me, I think, and the people who watch me all the time know what I'm going to talk about here, I think Blake Corum is an Emmitt Smith type back. I think he is a great back. I think he's a leader. I think he's a tough guy. I think he's a great short yardage back, like a Marcus Allen. I think he's got great feet. He's dedicated. Football's vital to him. I think Blake Corum has character that reminds me of Emmitt Smith. And I think whoever he goes to is going to win a lot of games. I mean, I don't think it's accidental that he went to Michigan and they won games. He had a good line, but Blake Corum is just he's got great footwork, great heart. He's one of those guys you can kind of feel his will out on the football field. So, and those are the guys that I love.
All right, come on. We cannot leave without giving, give us your sleeper, man. Come on. This is what you do.
Yeah. Seriously, this is what I do. Couple of names you got to remember in day 3 of the draft.
This is the greatest.
There is a guy, Johnny, from SMU who's a defensive tackle. He's only 6 feet and 285, but he's like power cleans the whole bench, power cleans the entire weight room, benches everything. The guy is yoked up. His name's Elijah Chapman.
Okay, I'm going to write
wore number 40 for SMU, and this guy's motor is off the charts. I mean, he is absolutely a freak of nature when it comes to doing everything. I don't know if he's a fullback. I don't know if he's a backup defensive tackle. Every time I turned on the film, it was like this guy was flying around, making play after play after play after play. He's an amazing player, Elijah Chapman, and he wasn't even in some of the draft guides. I mean, that tells you how ridiculous this guy is. I mean, he's, if you don't even make the draft guide, that's really, and then
everybody in there.
I mean, that's really,
just to give people a background on this is that, like, I remember, and this is before the Niners drafted any of them. I remember you loving Dre Greenlaw. And I remember, what did Dre Greenlaw coming out like a 4.7, but you were talking about him before the Niners even drafted him. DJ Jones was a guy, because we've done drafts together, for years. DJ Jones was a guy you were on before the draft. And then when they drafted him, you said, this guy's going to be great. That was a 7th round pick. I mean, I can't tell you the number of guys either before the draft or guys that we would go down to camp and you'd say, this guy's, you'd point to a guy. This guy, they picked him up as a free agent. This guy in the 7th. This guy's going to be a player. And 9 times out of 10 they were. I remember Matt Breida, and you sit down. We were at camp when you're Matt Breida of T49, so we're 49. He's going to be a guy. He's picked him up as a free agent. Like you've nailed so many guys.
There's 2 others I got to give you that are just amazing. There's a linebacker who plays for Florida State. And remember when Florida State lost out on the playoff and they played Georgia and nobody showed up?
Oh, they scored.
This was one of the guys who did show up. This guy played. His name's Kalen DeLoach, and he's like your modern day linebacker. He's like 5'11", 6 feet, maybe 6'1" in that range, 210 pounds, 212 pounds. But this guy runs 4.45, and he's faster than that on the field, and he is a sub-package monster. And it's like this guy could be a phenomenal. You're in the sub-package now 75, 80% of the time. This guy could be an absolute dominator in the sub-package. He could cover tight ends. He's just one of the best coverage backers, and he flies around. Great ethic, great athlete. A 5-star recruiter, could have gone anywhere out of high school. Crazy athlete. Florida State gets a few athletes that are just nutty. And this guy, Kalen DeLoach, is amazing. And I'll give you one last one. There's a tight end who played at Furman. Okay.
Now this is super sleeper. This is
deep. We're going deep. I mean, I don't know how it's like Eddie Murphy. I'm going deep undercover.
This is what's fun because I geek out on this stuff. I've been reading this stuff for months. I have no idea who you're talking about.
Okay, so this guy is a 6'8" tight end who played basketball and baseball and football at Ferris State, transferred to Furman. The reason he's so intriguing is that he's 6'8". I looked at his basketball highlights. This guy's like Aaron Gordon jamming. I mean, this guy's like, leaning in for the tomahawk and the double reverse. I mean, this guy's a skywalker. This guy's a vertical monster with jumping ability and everything. So he's got a basketball athleticism. He did well at Furman. He's graduated with a 4.0 as a mechanical engineering major. So he's like super smart, right? Mechanical engineering majors are geniuses. And the guy's got 10.5-inch hands. So he's got huge mitts. He's got crazy athleticism, unbelievably smart. And he's not a blocker per se. He's more of a, pass catcher at 6'8". But remember that one, Mason Pline, because I mean that guy is absolutely going to make it. When you're that smart and that athletic, and he's productive, I mean the guy's something, man.
Well, and here's the thing too is this. I believe this is the year. No more Ross Dwellys, and I know they took 2 tight ends last year. They are going to find a legit tight end to either back up or ultimately replace George Kittle. Because again, going back to what John Lynch said today, and you were at the press conference. Their main goal is it's to find players. There's no doubt, but the hidden gem that he talked about, we know this, they have got to start replacing guys financially. George Kittle, they got to find a second tight end who can eventually become the first tight end. They need to replace Trent Williams at some point. They don't want to put a rookie left tackle out there. They want to put somebody on the right side, groom him for the left side. There's a number of positions where that's happening.
There's a guy named Willie Drew, John, from Virginia State.
I have looked at
Virginia State corner named Willie Drew,
6'1", right?
Big time. That's what I'm saying.
Player. Like they are going to, again, the top 2 corners are both free agents next year for the 49ers. Yeah. Corner, offensive line, tackle specifically to groom for Trent, tight end. Receiver. If I was a betting man and said who's going to go first, Debo or Aiyuk, I think Debo might. I'm not saying this year. I'm just saying I think they're going to find more traditional receivers because that's what Brock is best at. They need to get that number down because when your quarterback in 1 year's time is going to go from 1 million to 40 or 50 million, there's going to be tough decisions to be made. And you don't want to throw a bunch of rookies out there. You want to be able to groom them in your system first. This draft is going to be about replacing long-term some guys who are making a ton of money. Guys we know, guys who have been productive, but they only have a year or two for this thing to last, and then they're going to have to start rolling guys over. Or they're going to turn into the Warriors. This is how it's going to be.
The days of paying guys like Brendel $5 million have come and ended. Nope. Let's finish with 3 supers here. We got this one from Mike Monahan. He says, was chatting with our mutual friend Bruce Mattos today. One of the guys I went to college with said his dad had a funny nickname for you. Would love to know what it was. Oh, Mike, my nickname was "Fuck You, Larry."
That's a great nickname. It's the best.
That was my nickname, and then it got shortened from "Fuck You, Larry" to just "Fucking Larry." So the defensive coordinator for the Gold Miners used to call me "Fucking Larry."
Oh, that's great.
And then the players then would chime in with "Fucking Larry." So that was my nickname, "Fucking Larry." And then Jordan Matthews says, "How is BA's agent being best friends with Lynch not a conflict of interest? As an agent, you want leverage against the team that your best man. Wait. You want leverage against the team, but your best man's Lynch." Yeah. Well, I mean, that whole thing the other day where he pushed back on that report. I personally think, we didn't talk about this, but I personally believe that, John, because think about it from the agent's perspective, if the 49ers traded Brandon Aiyuk to the Chargers or any team and they got a first round pick, that increases Aiyuk's leverage to make money, because now a team's giving away their number one pick to get the guy. So you have them over a barrel to some degree. So I think that it is a different situation here. I think Aiyuk wants to be a Niner, all things being equal. And I think that, one of the things that Lynch wants everybody to know around the league is that they have options. And they could move him if they wanted to, if they get the right offer, and they can keep him if they want to, and they can pay him. And so John Lynch did not want any kind of message out there that they're like in some kind of fire sale mode, or they're going to have to give away Aiyuk for pennies on the dollar. This guy was an all-pro. They feel like they can pay him and want to pay him. So I just think that the agent in that situation pushed back on that because he wants to help Lynch do Lynch a solid by protecting Lynch's ability to make a trade if he wants and give the Niners ultimate flexibility. And maybe on the back end, he gets a few extra ducats for Aiyuk for giving Lynch a solid play there and giving him, flexibility, at least as an executive, to do what he wants to do, what he thinks is best for his team. That was my read on that.
Yeah. Well, here's, one of the things that was most telling of what he said about the Brandon Aiyuk situation is, if you go back and you look at these things, and this is why I've never worried for a minute, and it was just, slow news cycles. And so everybody talked about Brandon Aiyuk. When the guys that they've drafted, which is all of them that they've wanted to keep and re-signed when they've been signed, last year, Nick Bosa was signed on September 6th. Debo was signed on August 1st. Fred Warner was signed on July 21st. George Kittle was signed in August. All these guys were signed around camp time because that's kind of been the 49ers MO. But if you look at what the Eagles do, they got Devontae Smith, which is going to be the comp contract for Brandon Aiyuk, the 3 years, 75 with like $42 million guaranteed. What he said today was based on the Bosa thing, and you can always be learning in this position. Bosa came in too late, and he wasn't very good at the beginning of the season. And so you pay him all this money, and he comes in too late to be effective that year, or to be overly effective that year, coming off a Defensive Player of the Year. So they don't want that to happen with Brandon Aiyuk. They don't want to sign him in August or September. That's what they've done, and that's why I've never panicked, because that's for all these guys. If people go back and look when Kittle signed and all these guys, it was August, it was late July, in August, or in September. Those are the deadlines. That's training camp. Those are when guys sign. But while he said that today, it's Spurs action deadlines. He was talking about training camp. They don't want to do that again. They don't want to have Brandon Aiyuk out and then Brandon Aiyuk not to be effective for the first 3 or 4 games of the year, where then that could decide home field advantage in the NFC. They need him from jump. So I think they're going to get the deal done earlier than later. And when I say that, I don't mean today or tomorrow, but I do think even before camp, because this is not really a complicated contract. Look at McLaurin, look at Metcalf, look at Debo. Look at what Devontae Smith just signed for. They all signed for 3 years, around 65 to 75 million, with about 40 to 50 guaranteed. The Devontae Smith, they're both 25. Aiyuk's played one more year than Devontae Smith. They have comparable numbers. He got 375 with 42 guaranteed. Okay, Brandon Aiyuk wants more because everybody wants more. You get 375 with 47 guaranteed. I mean, it's out there. It's not like there's not a parameter for this contract. It really shouldn't be that difficult to do versus a guy like Bosa, who was going to be the top paid defensive player, or Kittle, who was trying to reset the market at the tight end position. Those are much tougher contracts to do. And it got much uglier with Debo, and they still got that deal done. So there's every indication that I believe it's going to get done. And the Devontae Smith deal is right there in front of him. And that's a comparable player who has similar statistics, is the same exact age as Brandon Aiyuk. There's no reason this deal shouldn't get done.
Well, I mean, maybe it gets done this weekend. You never know. I mean, I'd love to see it get done, Friday. If they don't, I do think there's a chance that somebody will offer them something great for Aiyuk and they may pivot. But if they don't pivot and stay with Aiyuk, I still think, the idea of getting a Budda Baker on Saturday would be very attractive. And you'd probably have to get Aiyuk's deal done and spread that money around to make, any kind of a play for Baker even viable. So I'd love to see it get done Friday, and Aiyuk is their bet. Let's be honest. I mean, McCaffrey was used heavily last year. Debo's near the end based on his usage. Kittle's 30 on the wrong side of 30. Aiyuk is their number one weapon going forward. How many teams inside their Super Bowl window trade away their number one weapon, who's in lockstep with their quarterback? It would be rare.
Kansas City did it, but it's because Patrick Mahomes is so good. I mean, it's just Mahomes. Yeah. When you have a quarterback at that level, and it's nothing against Brock, he's not Mahomes, then you can do it. I mean, the Bradys, the Mannings, guys like that, who they really didn't put the resources into the receiver position. I mean, obviously Marvin Harrison was there for him, but Brady he got Moss for a year. He got Gronkowski. They just say, look, this quarterback's this good. We're just going to do that. Jordan Matthews is saying you can't justify 2 wide receivers, $25 million in this offense.
Right.
You can, but they're not going to do it long term. And I'll say it again. Debo goes before Aiyuk. I really believe that. I really think that Debo goes before Aiyuk because, again, Brock Purdy is going to be at the helm of this offense for the next 10 years if this team has its way, and he's going to sign a new contract and everything else. Well, what does Brock Purdy need? He needs legitimate wide receivers who can get off the line. And I like Debo, man. I really do. It's just that when this team starts to reinvent itself and evolve, I think the best thing for Brock Purdy is to have legitimate wide receivers who are getting off the line. And you said this before. He understands timing. He goes right to the middle of the field. I'm not saying Debo's not really, really good. He is really, really good. And he adds a dimension to this offense that you just can't find anywhere else. But they've got Christian McCaffrey for the foreseeable future. I think they're going to replace Kittle in the next couple of years. I think they're going to go to more traditional receivers. And I like Debo a lot, but he'll disappear at times. The thing that frustrates the 49ers, and you know this as much as well as anybody, more than anything, they replaced Jimmy through ineffectiveness, but really because of injuries. They hate not knowing. Eric Armstead is not a 49er because he wasn't reliable and he started to get injured. When guys are more injured than their money would suggest that they are worth, that's when the 49ers get frustrated and they move you. Debo gets hurt a lot. He was hurt in the Super Bowl. He was hurt in the playoffs. He gets hurt a lot, and that's what they can't justify for $25 million is that when a guy starts to get banged up and not play as much, the 49ers get frustrated. If you want to look back at John and Kyle, that's what they did. That's what they do. They did it with Eric Armstead. They just did it. If Dre Greenlaw doesn't come back from this injury as his old self and they're paying $10 million for him, he's not long for here. I mean, those are the decisions because Brock's going to start getting paid. They've got to have players who are not only productive, but players who are available. And at times during a season, Debo's going to miss 3 or 4 games. That's just the way it goes because the style that he plays, he misses games. And the 49ers at a certain age, they don't like dealing with that anymore.
If the Niners do what they did with Buckner and Kinlaw with Aiyuk and move off of a great player for a pick, and that pick winds up crapping out like Kinlaw, the Niners are no longer Super Bowl contenders. That's their reality. So they got to be very, very careful with this next move. The Niners need 3 to 5 more great players and some depth. They don't need to be trading great players and and, winding up with just hurt players or ordinary players that are cheaper. They did it with Buckner, but if they do it with Aiyuk and they swing and miss, and let's say they moved Aiyuk and replaced him with Malachi Corley, and Malachi Corley was decent but nothing better, they're not Super Bowl contenders anymore.
Well, that's it. And for as many weapons as they have offensively, let's just use logic here for a second, because even Aiyuk, as good as he is, he took a minute because he wasn't running. People talk about the doghouse. We know why he was in the doghouse when he first came here. He didn't run precise routes. So Kyle would say, just for the sake of conversation, okay, you make the cut at 7 yards. He was making it at 5. Well, that's not how this offense works. It's intricate. He didn't understand the toughness he needed. He didn't understand the work ethic. He didn't understand the blocking. I know that's hard to understand now, but he wasn't that guy. And so now you're going to restart at the position. You've already put a number 1 on Aiyuk, and then you've taught him the 49er way. And then as a Super Bowl contender, desperate to win a Super Bowl, you're going to hit reset at that position. And now you have a rookie who you can't count on the outside, and you have Debo, who might be hurt and is not a great route runner, and you have Jennings, who has a specific role, but really outside of that, that's not what you want him to do. And McCaffrey's really, really good, but you have a quarterback who is not his whole being, but when he's at his best, you're in the place you said you'd be at the specific time, at that specific yardage. That's what Brock Purdy's all about. Because he doesn't have the greatest arm strength, it's about anticipating these throws. He's so good at that. So that means you got to be in the right place at the right time, at the right depth. Brandon Aiyuk understands that. A rookie wide receiver, for as many Justin Jeffersons as you see, and Zay Flowers was really good, it takes most wide receivers a year or two. The 49ers don't have that year or two. And that's why I don't think they're going to trade him, because they worked really hard with Brandon Aiyuk, and give Brandon Aiyuk a ton of credit for sucking it up. But it took him a minute to understand going from college receiver, catching a bunch of flies and and smokes and all this kind of stuff and running after the catch, versus coming into an intricate offense like the 49ers where there's so much demanded at the position. I just don't see them doing that, because if you take Aiyuk off and let's say it's Brian Thomas. I think Thomas, as an addition to what they have, the kid out of LSU, would be amazing. As a guy who you say, oh, by the way, you've got to replace Brandon Aiyuk on the outside, that's a step back.
Oh, I mean, you're asking a rookie to step in and be an all-pro. And outside of Randy Moss, there aren't too many rookies that stepped out of college and into the pros and were good as rookies. So, and that's also why they may get a big offer tomorrow or on Thursday, because of that reason, because there are teams that are desperate, but it's going to be fun to watch. Tune into this guy, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Monday through Friday with Greg Papa on KMBR 680. Johnny, awesome stuff, man. You guys, what are you doing? What are you doing Thursday night? You guys are doing a little draft party, and then you're going to be with Husak and Greg.
Yeah, you've done this a million times. They're really nice to us in allowing us to have the access. We're literally right next to the draft room for them, and John and Kyle come over and kind of tell us, they don't give away any secrets, as you well know, but they'll kind of say, hey, you might want to watch for this guy or watch at this position or this, that, or the other. They gave us a heads up last year on a kicker. That's why I was like, come on, man, no kickers. He ended up being good, but yeah, they're really nice to us. They treat us really well. And, it's, you did this for years. I mean, it's just one of the most fun days of the year, because you're sitting there doing draft, and I know you're doing a draft party and breaking it all down. Nobody does it better than you, man. We miss you, because I mean, they look at me like I'm the you, because I just sit there and I go over this stuff, but I don't have the depth of knowledge for the rounds that you do. I mean, it's amazing. So you've done an amazing job of this for years, and you know what it's like. It's a lot of fun.
Well, hey man, have a great one. Say hi to Sarge for me. And then you guys are doing a draft party, aren't you? Aren't you guys doing some kind of draft party at a bar somewhere?
Yeah, they don't invite me to anything. I just have to go to 49, which is nice. But yeah, they're having a big draft party and everything. So the Niners are, and everything. This is the first time they've had a pick since 2021 in the first round. I mean, it's just wild, to think that ever since the Trey Lance thing, and look, as good as Brock Purdy is, how much does that hurt? Because again, that's why they have to get all the depth, right? Not to go on another tangent, but the reason why it's great that Brock Purdy's Brock Purdy and save them from that whole thing about Trey Lance, and that's all we talk about. But those picks that you missed out on from him,
your left tackle and your right tackle,
right? And that's cheap labor. I mean, they're supposed to be good, but that's also cheap labor. And one of the reasons why you're in the predicament you are is because all of a sudden now you don't have the depth. You don't have a left tackle in waiting. You don't have a right guard. You don't have a third corner. You don't have imagine what they could have done with those picks.
Brock Purdy saved their bacon, man. Absolutely saved their bacon. If they didn't come up with Brock Purdy, I don't know that they would be here.
You and I, they just took a bunch of content away from us. Can you imagine? I guess, like I said, they would have brought in Kirk Cousins by now, probably. But still, again, what would they? What Kirk Cousins just get with Atlanta? 40 guaranteed again. He's the best businessman of all time. I mean, you'd be paying.
He's older. And how old is Kirk? At 33, 34, something like that? I mean, you got a young kid in Purdy. He represents the team well. The players like him. I love today. He said something so cocky today. I asked him, I said, how'd you feel like you played in the Super Bowl? And he's like, I didn't play well. I didn't play well enough. And then he goes on to say, and next time when I'm in that game, I'm going to play better. And it's like most guys would be like, well, if I'm lucky enough to get there, he's like already like in his mind, he is going to play in another Super Bowl. And I love that confidence about him. He's not like a braggadocious confidence, but there's this like, I'm damn good. I'm going to win. I know it. You should know it. And, I'm not going to be a jerk about it, but I believe in myself. And that's the kid's special for sure.
Well, people don't get the insight. And again, you talk to him all the time away from the cameras in the locker room. That's why people love him he's got this kind of aw shucks thing about him. Not there. He's a big time leader. He's cocky. He's a good leader for the team. He believes in himself. It's just a quiet confidence. He doesn't come out in an extra cocky way to do it. But if you ask him a question like you did today, you asked him that question. I heard it. And that's what he's going to give you. I mean, he does believe those kind of things. And he wasn't the reason they lost the Super Bowl. We know that. There were so many other circumstances around it. If he gets protected, better than he did, especially on a couple of those drives, we don't need to go over it. But I do believe he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. And
they've got their guy. They just got to build the fortress around him. They got to build a big wall around him and allow him to, play action pass. I think the guy completed, John, like 84% off play action last year. If you can just give this guy a couple extra seconds, establish a run game, build an offensive line, he's going to deliver, I think, a Super Bowl or two.
I agree with you. I do, man. Hey, thanks, man.
Hey, man, good to see you. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to Pig in a Pickle, the title sponsor. Thanks to Marin Auto Glass, Underdog Fantasy, Sharp Corner, Sports Cards and Collectibles. Johnny, we'll see you around, man. Maybe we'll take in a Giants game this summer.
Good.
Tell George I said hi. Say hi to your lovely bride, and we'll talk soon, bro.
You do the same, man. My pleasure. Thanks, dude.
Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you ask.